The third and final report is the company operating reports. Um, these are a little bit hard to go through in detail because whoever is in charge of your value chain and your manufacturing is going to spend considerable time going through these. So it's hard to dissect them point by point. I'm going to show you some of the things that you're going to want to be looking for. Also, on the earlier footwear industry report where I said there were a lot of key benchmarks that because it knew I was the administrator, it didn't put a particular company name down. That's giving you a lot of information that will give you areas to look at that you will now dive into the plant operating report and take a look at those areas that I didn't flag initially to me. So this talks about our capacity. We have our two plants. No surprise there. Nothing in terms of investment upgrade. Notice that there is depreciation with these, and that's going to affect your operating costs. Labor statistics, it talks about basically this is just showing what you paid. This does show that you were able to slightly increase their productivity, which is a good thing. Into the production, what it shows is that you produced 1766 branded, 3133 in Asia Pacific. We also produced some more private label, so that you can see in North America we were used overtime to crank the shoes out, whereas in Asia Pacific we had still some excess capacity in the plant that went unused. As far as the reject rate goes, you can compare this on the back in the footwear industry report. Those are actually relatively low reject rates, particularly given that you're running a relatively high number of models compared to your rivals. So that's a good thing. This will give you a detailed breakdown of all the cost. Again, you can go back and benchmark yourself against your competitors to see where you're high and low. And the fact that you're high doesn't necessarily mean a mistake. You may be building a better shoe, but it's just something to always keep an eye on, because the more you squeeze cost out of your value chain, the better off you're going to be. Like I've not hinted, directly told you several times, in the first round or two, it feels like a positioning war. He who gets the most market share wins kind of affair. And that's really not the case. It is that plus what you're able to do on the value chain side to drive out costs. So going through these very carefully and in detail are going to point out to you where you have some cost issues. On to the next page. This is the distribution and warehouse report. Because I know I ran out of shoes in all four of the regions, it tells me I did not have enough, or I already knew from the competitive intelligence report I didn't have enough shoes. And you can see that it does hold those shoes to meet the inventory where the response time that you promised the retailer. So the longer or the faster response time you promise the retailers, the more shoes you're going to hold in inventory. Again, more detailed cost breakout. Very important, this in the practice round, there are no exchange rate adjustments. Obviously, when the simulation begins, there will be. This is a chance where you can look at freight and the like to see whether you're doing things most efficiently. No inventory clearance. Incidentally, back on the other page, I forgot to point out, it doesn't give it real clearly. You have to go back and you're better off looking, but my labor costs were a little bit above the industry standard. Again, that's not a panic point, but this number you always want to be as low as possible. That doesn't mean you spend the least money to get there. It may be that you raise wages and invest heavily in TQM, and in the process get very productive workers and a very efficient production line that allow you to drive your wage costs down. On to the next report. This is summing up the wholesale report, and it talks about marketing expenses for the internet and the wholesale and the general operating expenses. Again, you're going to be tempted sometimes to get fooled at this per dollar ratio, and keep in mind that's based on what you sold. Sometimes it'll look like a company is spending too much in marketing when in reality they're not just selling enough. It's not they're spending too much in marketing. This gives you the private label report. And again, it's going to give you a breakdown of all your costs and let you see where you made or did not make the money. You can see we had a little bit of a problem here in Europe, Africa, where we sold at a loss because our costs got out of control. These are very representative of profit margins in the private label market. So overall, private label was a bright spot for me. Into the income segment, again, this is going to give me a little bit more detail of where I made my money. And then finally, it's going to give me my operating profit or loss for everything, all of those different segments per region. Clearly would always like that to be higher rather than lower. And then this is where we can come in and look at the operating profit, compare ourselves back to our competitors on some of the earlier pages. For both, this is strictly internet, and this is wholesale. We can see where we fit in terms of price with our consumers, how we compared. This is not particularly new. And then lastly, the balance sheet and the cash flow. This is going to tell you where everything went. You can see I started with $6 million in the bank, and I ended up with only $633,000. That's why I say we really cut it pretty close. You can see in here some additional sources of uses of money. Didn't try to raise any funds through equity sales, which is a good thing not necessarily to do in the practice round. And then this gives you an assessment that says, why is my credit rating the way it is? It'll just tell you these are the factors we're looking at, and this is what we see. So those are the three printouts. I cannot emphasize enough that you're going to need to get into these printouts, understand what they're telling them, do how do we do, now why do we do, and now it comes time for how are we going to do better. I'm a huge advocate of actually sitting down and making your decisions before you log onto the computer. And what I mean by that is pick those major variables. What star shoe are we going to offer? At what price? How many models? What's our general plan for marketing? And have all that written out in advance. Enter that stuff in on the branded sales forecast and start to implement your decisions. Do not chase the clicks. Do not just show up at the computer and say, well, let me try this. Make your decisions based on where you think your company needs to strategically go, and I guarantee you, you will be further ahead. Good luck.